Good evening. This is Steve Hodgson from Modern Asset Management. It's May 8th, 2019, and tonight we're going to talk real estate. Specifically, we're going to talk about rentals in Southern California and accessory dwelling units as a way to add value to a property and increase rents. And we've got Eric and Marty with us, and I'm going to turn it over to them, let them introduce themselves, and we'll get started with a little dialogue and a PowerPoint that they've put together to talk about what their experience has been down in LA. All right, fire away.
All right, thanks for having us, Steve. My name is Eric Petz, and with me is Marty Friedman. We are here to talk about basically our long-term rental investment strategy, right, which is SFR with ADU Build, and what that entails, how that works, and if you're ready, I'll just get started running through the presentation.
Yeah, go get them.
All right. So give you a little bit of insight into kind of our backgrounds and where we come from. So myself, Marty and I both met at a company called Access Loss Mitigation. It was a short sale negotiation outfit based here in Los Angeles that did nationwide loss mitigation short sale work. This was in 2008, but the market churned. And Marty was the head of the negotiation department. I managed sales. And so we kind of were running the nuts and bolts of the company. And then we left that company when the company was purchased by a subsidiary of Blackstone, if I believe. Yeah. Yeah. They became a third-party servicer. Anyways, long story short, our background is distressed asset work. MRM and Associates was a distressed asset platform. We were negotiating short sales for agents in the LA area. So we went from nationwide to more localized. And then my background we separated, went different directions, and I was subsequently the manager of a company called the FAIR Program. I was the general manager where I managed a team that did business to consumer direct converting, like generating investment opportunities through short sales from the consumers. And then we had a construction platform, a staging platform, and then we were basically just fixing and flipping houses. So that was kind of our creative way to get in. So, my background and experience has been primarily in distressed asset work, really only in distressed asset work, but from acquisition to construction to sales. And then Marty has had a similar experience up until we separated in 2013.
Yeah, after we separated and MRM went away, I went on to work with large family funds and high net worth individuals building or rehabbing large luxury homes, primarily in the Hollywood Hills. Did that for a couple of years, and then I recently, last year, graduated with my master's in real estate development from USC, and then decided to get back into a business and started talking to Eric again here.
So we've been talking about different ways to get back into the market and to using some of the investment strategies that we've used in the past, and then expanding on those with Marty's now experience, which he's got so much commercial knowledge and experience that I don't possess. And so utilizing single family knowledge combined with commercial experience and understanding, we are now looking at investing in single family homes and then building out ADUs.
And one of the key points I wanted to add is one of the concerns right now is that a lot of people think we're at the peak market and that we might be heading in for a crash. And one of the concerns when you're flipping houses is if you're doing construction or development on a house and the market falls out from under you, suddenly you're basically out of the money. What we're looking for is a way to add optionality and protection in a down market, but still have the option and profitability of house flipping. So what we came up with was adding an overlay or an option of renting the properties and building an ADU, which gives you a cheap per door rate and optionality. You can always sell these assets like a traditional flip if the profit is there, or you can long-term hold if the market falls out from under you.
So it definitely changes up. Like Marty said, I mean, it adds value to what you're doing. So let's talk about the SFR with ADU Build as a value add, like just the basic concept. So Marty kind of touched on this, right? Right now, so we're based in Los Angeles, and a lot of what we're doing, we're looking at Eastern LA because the price per square foot, the entry, the barrier to entry is a lot smaller. You know, if you look at, if you're looking at like West Side properties, areas like that, I mean, the cost of entry is $750,000 to $1 million, sometimes more, depending on what you're buying. And so the amount of capital required to do that is substantially higher, and also your rent versus, you know, your cap rates aren't as good in those areas. So we're looking at Eastern Los Angeles as kind of the potential of properties that we're targeting. Yeah. So we want to get something that's at least 1,200 square feet with upside potential, meaning, you know, we want something that needs rehab, because as Marty mentioned, you know, the opportunity there is we could always build a value add, maybe add some square footage, build out the ADU, and then in the event that we need to exit, we could exit, sell it as a flip. So the rehab part is important so we can build in the value. Detached garage is ideal. A detached garage means that in most cases, you know, when you have a detached one, you already have the framework of the building. I mean, your price per square foot for development on an ADU is going to be a hell of a lot less than if you were to convert the garage than it would be if you were to just do a ground up development. So that's a big part of it as well, kind of making sure that we have a garage that can be converted. And that's a big part of what we're looking for in these assets. And then ultimately, when you build this and you build the ADU, you rent that out. So you get really good rent in both units, SFR and ADU. Then essentially the idea is to refinance out of it, get the cash back out of the property that was invested, which then gives you the capital to then go buy the next one.
For a couple more details on here, we tend to like smaller front houses because there's less to renovate. And then also, as a rental, you don't want too large of a house as a rental typically, because there's a certain price cap that the market has. And also, we like older properties, let's say prior to 1960 or so, because those tend to have detached detached garages. I'm sure you've seen these properties with the garages in the backyard down a tight little driveway that really no one's using. In fact, a lot of the times these have been illegally converted already, which represents yet another opportunity, because a lot of times you can go in and use what they've illegally done with the contractor, get it permitted, bring it up to code, and you're saving a little bit of money there as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, so paving the way for ADUs. So there's a couple of laws that were passed. So, you know, ADUs have always been accessible. You've always been able to build ADUs. It's not like this is a brand new concept per se, but they've relaxed the restrictions on these, so to speak. It seems like, you know, the state has come down and made it very clear that they want more housing, and a good way to do that is to have ADUs on the SFRs that are out there rather than build a bunch of apartments, which could take God knows how long to build. So they've relaxed some of those standards. So in 2016, SB 1069 was put out, and then in 2017, SB 229. These are all codes that you can look up. These Senate bills, and then there was a clarity memorandum that came out in 2018 from the Department of Housing and Community Development from the deputy director that essentially clarified parking and some other components of this that made it even more clear, and essentially gave you even more flexibility in your ability to build ADUs. And again, it's very clear that the state in California is pushing to have more ADUs built, especially in areas with high density like Los Angeles, I'm sure San Francisco, other areas where they need the housing. So as previously mentioned, ADUs, they can be the garage, the carport, or the covered parking structure. That's really what we're searching for, is that detached garage is an ideal. Now, the way that these the way that the law is written, they have to have a parking space for the ADU in any configuration. Like Marty and I were just at a property the other day talking to a contractor who was building an ADU, and the parking space was literally like a dirt patch right next to the driveway, and they got that permitted. They're like, yeah, it's fine. It's still a parking spot. So they're very relaxed on those restrictions, it seems, or it also depends on municipality, but in that instance I was out in West Hills, I believe. And then there is a caveat to this, which is that if the property is within a half a mile of a major public transit stop, then you don't necessarily need parking. Now, when you look at like an overlay on Los Angeles, that's essentially the entirety of the city almost. I mean, most of the city is within that. I say city, I mean Valley, LA, Eastern LA. There's a bus stop or something nearby that's considered major public transit. So in a lot of cases, you can get around the parking spot issue. The ADU square feet cannot exceed more than 50% of the existing SFR or 1,200 square feet. And then some local municipalities, they have additional rules like Glendale. We know their max is like 600 square feet that they're looking at. So each area, before you decide to make a purchase, if you're thinking about this model, the first thing you have to do, obviously, is like anything. You got to go to the building and safety. Yeah. You got to go find out.
Go have a little coffee side chat with the city planner, and they'll be more than happy to help you out. In fact, a lot of these places have little pamphlets they just hand you saying, hey, you want to do this? Because ADUs are really popular with homeowners right now because it just makes a lot of sense financially.
And in our conversations with the building and safety, it seems to me that every time it's such a hot thing, like 70% of the permits they're issuing at this point are for ADUs, and obviously that depends on each local municipality. But it is the majority of what they're dealing with these days.
Well, and it makes sense why, because the state is saying cities, you have to add density, but neighborhoods are opposed to gentrification. They're opposed to displacement. One of the great things about this, if any of you guys have a soft spot for displacement or whatever, there's zero displacement with this model. You're just taking an underused part of an existing structure and improving it. So that also means that you can go into neighborhoods that are traditionally anti-development, famously like Boyle Heights in LA, and not get the same level of pushback that major developers are getting.
Yeah, and that's something that we're seeing a lot of. I mean, LA Times, and there's a lot of pushback for development in a lot of these neighborhoods that are being gentrified. This is a little bit of a workaround for that, but it's something that happens a lot. I'm sorry, is there someone on? Looks like someone did somebody have a question? No? Okay.
No, we're gonna, I heard somebody cough, but I think I've got everybody muted right now, so don't know where that came from.
All right, good. Okay. Now the downside with this plan is that ultimately rent control does apply to the SFR once the ADU has been built, and that's the consideration. It's because basically it's no longer categorized as an SFR,
but that is on a per municipality basis. So Los Angeles has rent control, but most of the cities in LA County don't. But it's just another thing to check when you have this plan to see how rent control affects it.
All right, but now let's get into probably what you guys are more interested in outside of just the concept and the basics around ADUs, like an actual art of a deal, if you will, like walking through an existing house where an ADU is being built. And this is something that Marty is personally doing on his family home. And so we're going to talk about those numbers.
Yeah, so this is a property that was built in, I think the 1930s was when the initial property was built. And it's pretty much the model I based this idea off of. There's a front house, there's a back house, and like so many developments in LA, the back house has been added onto in a piecemeal manner. So there's a garage, there's a workshop, there's what was a covered patio that's now been completely enclosed and used as a living area for a while. There's also plumbing. So we lucked out in this case because there is a plumbing back there for the laundry room and whatnot. So right now the permitted garage and storage area is roughly 800 square feet. The existing house is 1,460. The business plan is to renovate the front house and then bring the back house up to code. The renovations on the front house are actually going to be pretty cheap because primarily all we're going to have to do is fix it up to a rental quality. There's nothing really wrong with the house. It's just a new coat of paint, fix up some flooring, that sort of thing. The back house is where the majority of the attention is going to be. On that one, we're really lucking out because The original structure was permitted, so we don't have to build any new walls. There's no new foundation needed, anything like that, at least at this point. So what we're going to go in is just reorganize some of the walls, nothing structural, and permit it with the city. The city is already on board. They like new units coming on without them having to really do anything. And the front house rent, I'm expecting to go for about $3,500, and the back house for about $1,500, which in this case, we're just pulling out equity on the existing property to pay for all of this. So it's really infinite return. But if you didn't want to do that, and you were just paying for it in cash, the cash on cash return is about 50%, which is a phenomenal way of pulling equity out and putting it to work.
Yeah, and that's something that and this for that reason, that's why it's so popular with a lot of homeowners who have their SFRs. We're looking at doing this. In fact, and as we continue to research this and have researched it a lot in the past, there are a lot of companies popping up around this. There's companies that are providing a full turnkey approach from planning and construction, and they're like, we're the ADU experts, so if you're a homeowner and you want to do this, we'll get you financing, we'll get the permitting, and we'll do the build. So this is something that there's a kind of a cottage industry that's growing around this concept about building ADUs on SFRs, because it's accessible for the average homeowner. You don't have to be a super savvy investor to build an ADU, because it's just becoming more common in the marketplace.
So, the benefits for the Glendale ADU, like I said, we're capturing the rental market. That's going to be also fully permitted living space, though. So we're also going to be capturing the appreciation that's on single-family residences, which SFRs in LA appreciate pretty much faster than anything else. And it allows optionality and choice. We can rent both the front and the house. Both the front house and the back house. We can live in one. If for some reason we want to take it off of the rental market, there's nothing better than a back house to use as, a traditional in-law unit or just like an art studio or something. So it's really great space. And then from the investor's point of view, this provides additional acquisition targets. Right now, a lot of people are chasing yield, looking for the same properties over and over again. I want an 8-unit or whatever. But, this provides opportunistic returns with the safety of existing structures.
And speaking of in that line, in that vein, that is something that, when we're looking at a lot of different acquisition opportunities, there's like the traditional fix and flip model, right? Which a lot of people are, there's so many individuals that style of development is so flooded. Everyone's trying to fix and flip properties. Margins are getting lower and lower as time has gone on, it seems. There's just not that many of them, as many opportunities as there used to be in the market for that. All that stuff gets bought up really fast, or has previously been bought up when the market shifted many years ago. And so, looking for new opportunities and looking for new targets, this seemed to be the best option for that, because what you're looking for is different than if you're looking for a fix and flip. Your model, what you're looking for, is different. So with that being said, now we're going to talk about a property that is an SFR. This is something that's just been pulled off the MLS, and we've run our numbers, used our calculator, and Marty's going to go through those numbers.
Yeah, Eric wanted me to prove that this system would work, so he said, find a property today.
Yeah, but you got an hour, find it.
Yeah, so this property is located in East LA. We haven't walked it yet. I just found the property on the market saying, look, this is a property we could walk in tomorrow and really start doing due diligence. And it's going to look a lot like that Glendale property. It's an older property with an existing front house, a detached garage, purchased, 1688. Honestly, I'd kind of like that to be smaller, just so I don't have as much of a rehab cost on the front end, but that's fine. Purchase price is about $500,000. The front house, I believe, was in pretty good shape. So I don't think there's going to be much of a renovation on that. We've got a good, those architectural plans, 4,500 are pretty cheap, but we have a good relationship there. And then, there's a detached garage. So it's almost the same thing. We're just going to go in there and, just paint and do as minimal work as possible, because it's just, part of the difficulty and the business plan of this is to keep your costs low. So, everything's renters white and, keep it very simple. The rents in that neighborhood aren't quite as good, but rents generally are sticky across markets. So the front house is going to be $3,000. Once again, the back house is about $1,500. And if you're asking about why that is so high, a lot of people want a bachelor's or a studio that's in one of these residential neighborhoods, because for the back house, you're actually going to be at the top of the market. It's going to be a pretty premium product.
Yes.
So those numbers going out give you a cap rate of 8%, which is several points higher than is in the the going market. But risk adjusted is absolutely phenomenal. 8% is good on its own, but at the end of the day, this is almost a luxury product.
And so the idea is kind of our plan with this investment strategy is to acquire the asset, the single family home, and because it's a target rich environment, there's a lot more opportunity to do this than there is to find the properties that you can fix and flip. There's just such a high amount of investors looking for that fix and flip type of strategy that this strategy it's a great way to kind of position yourself in the marketplace. But it's not quick and easy money. It's more of a long-term play. For the most part, it's more of a long-term play. But when you add the ADU with the current rents, if you're looking at this like if you were like any sort of commercial model, like this model is fantastic. You've got really good upside potential. We've got a high cap rate. It's really like, so that's why we're focused on it. It's taking that kind of commercial mentality and looking at single family homes and how you can get a really strong rate of return in a market where traditionally you haven't been able to. And so kind of, that's the long and short of the plan and the idea behind it. And I'm sure that hopefully there's lots of questions so we can shed some light on some things for you. Steve?
Yeah, well, I've got, let's start with you're taking the garage and you're adding living square footage. So you now get on record that the house isn't 1688 anymore. It's also got this additional 600, so it's 2,288 square feet.
Right. So your appraised value goes up significantly.
Right. So if you're selling at say $300 a foot, do you think that carries forward to the garage conversion too?
That's a question that right now appraisers are having to wrestle with, because I would make the argument it is absolutely permitted living space. Some appraisers are trying to say it's not, and that is a challenge moving forward. But I feel confident that we can overcome that, but also that in the future, as these become more common, that will be the situation.
And that's definitely the case. We talk to a lot of different appraisers, and frankly, every appraiser you talk to has a different opinion on this. Because there's not nearly as many, this is a strategy that is becoming much more prevalent now than it has in the past. So you're starting to see some properties come on the market. If we were using like an income basis to determine the value, we'd get our value all day long, right? But that's not how it works within the SFR community, right? With appraisers, they're looking at like for like. And so on a comparison basis, it's harder to find comparable properties because there's not a lot of properties with ADU builds that are being sold. There's a lot of properties with ADU builds that are being built, but they haven't gone through the full sales cycle yet. So there's not as much to compare it to.
Yeah, if you go out into the desert, go out in the Coachella Valley, casitas are really common in better houses. You got the pool house out in the backyard, or the artist's workshop or whatever, and those were being converted into rentals. Geez, I was there 10 years ago, and I think I remember that the appraisal number would be like 75%. But again, it was the same kind of income, bump. You get much better per square foot rent than you would for the whole house, for the front house, because because it had a certain number of of benefits. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, the strategy isn't for people who, if you're looking for a quick fix and flip type of model where you just want to build, develop, and then resell the asset, you might not make as much money with this model. But if you're looking at more of a long-term strategic hold kind of play, you can, I'm confident that the appraisal will allow you to refinance the cash out that you put into the house, cash flow the property, and then subsequently purchase the next one. Mm-hmm. And that's what this model is dependent upon. You're not trying to make quick money right away. You're trying to build wealth. It's a long-term investment strategy.
So let's talk about how you're going to finance, if you're going to do this one, how you're going to finance it. You'll be able to get a hard money loan at 8 to 11%, something like that. You're going to need 30. What do you think you're getting from somebody like Anchor or Triumph? You think you're going to get 70% up front?
Yeah, although there's a lot of money sloshing around right now. So yeah, something between like 75% with, I'm even getting some offers to cover some of the rehab. So those are all possibilities. Yeah.
And it's not, and as far as like interest rates, obviously there's a huge range. And there's also, we're also dabble in a lot of different markets, like looking at commercial style lenders and private money lenders. We have access to some pretty, the capital isn't as expensive, or the loan isn't as expensive as it might be with, say, traditional hard money.
Okay.
One of the nice things also is you're only looking, this is a buy right acquisition. So you're only really looking at a 6 months of development, and then, or probably less. And then lease up is almost, it's SFR lease up. So you're not dealing with, it's just 2 tenants. So that should be less than a month. And, once the model's proven and you have cash flow coming in, or at least a signed lease, you should be able to utilize that to get long-term financing on it.
Yeah. And then you do refinance and more traditional financing.
Okay. So let's just, I'm going to try to get down to, kind of what these numbers really look like. Your purchase price is 500. You're going to get 75%. You'll get 375 from a loan source. That means you need 125,000 in there, and then roughly another 100 to create the product. Is that about right?
Yep.
So you need 225, and most guys like me are going to want to make sure you've got a little skin in the game, and then we're going to want to understand how we would get paid. And so do you see this working with a second lien holder? Do you see this working with an equity partner and a long-term rev share? What do you think?
We're looking more like an equity partner, and then ideally we're finding properties where we're going to upgrade the front house and then also build the back house, so there's additional value, just like in a flip. And then depending on our agreement with the equity partner, it would either be a refinance with some cash pulled out to pay them off completely, or keep them in on the deal for some equity share long term.
And then there would be we provide them with a prep, make sure they have a good cash on cash return. And again, there's the financing aspect, but it's really cash in, cash out, right? So if we're looking at the 225 total cash investment, and we can also finance a portion of this rehab as well. So it's not necessary that they have that much money. It's probably going to be more like, in this scenario, they probably need closer to 150K. and we can finance the remaining amount. And then, because we can refinance a portion of the construction. And then we can provide them with the 10, or we could work out the numbers as far as the cash return. So we'll provide the return as part of that. And then in addition to having a return on investment with your cash on cash return, they'll also have an equity share. So the idea is that when they put the money in, you get the money back out within that 6-month time frame through the refinance at that point. And then you also have equity share in an asset that then, you can ride the market, make some money on the rent, and then rinse, repeat. We'll do it again.
So you're looking at 500, you're looking at 600 in, and then looking to finance out, 600 or 650, something like that.
Right.
And then you've got your seed money to go roll over into the next project. The rents, you touched on rent control. So you have an opportunity with starting with buying the single family to set the rent, I think, at whatever you want in most places, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
because of Costa-Hawkins, single-family residences aren't under rent control in the state of California by state law. But so I think what you're getting at is, yes, you could renovate the front house upon acquisition, rent it, set the rental market, and then build the back house.
Mhm.
But once you build that back house, now in the city of LA, the whole property is the front structure, because its build date is older, it's under rent control. The new structure, as long as it gets stamped, is not under rent control.
Because it's post 79.
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. All right. So
It's kind of a weird amalgamation, right? Where you have like the front house is rent controlled, but the back house is not. But that's how it logistically works out.
So you mentioned Boyle Heights.
Yeah.
I know Boyle Heights. I've been sniffing around this idea for a couple of years now, and I've just been too busy with other projects, because this is full-time work. So that neighborhood is very diverse. It's got a lot of poverty. It's got a lot of stuff. So my son's living in a house that is exactly this, and there's 6 bedrooms, 4 in the front house, 2 in the back, and they're charging $4,000 up for the front house and $2,000 for their $1,800 for the back.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was an end-to-end, complete gut, completely rebuilt, all the way through, and it works. It works. The guys that did it didn't over improve, and that's one of the things, like you said, keeping costs down. You don't need granite counters and soft close doors and hardwood floors, and you're throwing down 6-inch wide laminate pergo and IKEA cabinets if you want, and just ready go. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you're not doing a luxury remodel here. That does not make you the money in this type of investment. It is a rental investment. So you build it as a rental, and then ultimately, if you want to exit it, and you want to upgrade that, that's a whole nother story, but that's not this play. This play is the rental play. So you've got to make sure you're not overbuilding, like you said.
And so again, East LA is got some economic issues when downturns happen. There's you've got a lot of service workers, a lot of tradespeople,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people that go get unemployed. So there's a downside there that I think you've got to have some reserves set aside to weather 90-day vacancies, evictions. Actually not vacancies, but tenants not paying and having to go through the eviction cycle.
Yeah, that's always a challenge when you're dealing with these lower income neighborhoods. But the positive is there's a lot of tenants in that neighborhood. These are very dense areas of the city, and they really need units. So your competition from the supply side is pretty slim because the quality of stuff that's out there is low, and there's just not enough doors or not enough beds for these people, really.
And so, obviously, if the economy is depressed, that's going to have a whole nother set of impacts. But, because we're not exiting this right away, and that's not part of the strategy, the rent, if the economy is depressed, typically rents, increase. When the market is depressed, rents go up. I mean, you can see historically what happened in 2008 to 2013 rent went up a lot in that time frame because you had all these individuals exiting the single family market and looking for rentals because they lost their house in a foreclosure or, something happened and they had to find a new place to go. So rents went up significantly. And so this kind of is a hedge also against that. In the event that the market becomes depressed, you don't necessarily, your value in this is not the value of the exit with the asset right away. Now that could be the case in 10 years from now, but that's going to be a whole different market, and Lord knows what that's going to look like. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but you can time that better and more effectively.
Yeah, and so so looking at this, I believe your numbers. Matter of fact, I think you're low on your potential rents.
And that could be the case. We prefer to be conservative with how we operate. We want to make sure that the numbers work. I would rather under-promise and over-deliver than the other way around. I mean, with this type of model, it does work. We know it works. I mean, you see people doing it all over the place. You have a great example of your son is living in a place where they did exactly this model. This model works, and when you do it, and it also it's semi-scalable as well because a lot of the components of this, from the contractor to the architect, things of that nature, when you start doing enough of this work, you can lower your costs a little bit as you do it, as you develop those relationships and as you have more projects. So anyways, it is a scalable thing, but ultimately the goal is to be able to take an investor or someone who has a lower barrier, it's a lower barrier of entry because you can finance a portion of this, get into this market, refinance yourself out of it, rinse and repeat, right? That BRRRR strategy, rinse and repeat, go do it again, and then build the equity in these assets and ultimately build wealth. And that's the goal, to build wealth.
So what are you doing on the operational side after construction? Are you self-managing? Are you using a property manager?
I mean, I am a property manager, so at this point, we're self-managing. If that gets too large, we'll certainly, bring on another team.
Yeah, but right now we're handling that portion.
So
I mean, I'm a licensed real estate agent. Marty is a broker, and so we have the expertise in this market. Marty manages currently his 8-unit apartment that he has here in Glendale, as well as a couple other homes. So we're managing properties at this point is not going to be an issue. Obviously, if this scales and we have a lot more assets to manage, then we'll look at bringing on another team member to assist with that function.
So are you looking to come? So if you're in Glendale, you're not going to get the same rent multiple because it's a better neighborhood. So you're looking to come into LA, into Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights, the Arts District, that kind of thing.
Well, not the Arts District. I don't think we could afford the Arts District. That's so hot now.
That's already gone. That's already done. Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah.
It's done. Yeah. And also the Arts District is traditionally more commercial warehouse space. Right. But it's interesting you mention it because this is exactly what was going on there from a commercial point of view, but this is just the residential version of that. But yeah, I see a lot of value for this property, for this structure, really any area that has pre-1960s structures, just because we like that detached garage and larger lots. As it gets later, people built bigger homes on smaller lots. So those areas tend to be definitely, East LA, a lot of the valley fits under this. And then a lot of the areas going south to Long Beach. And this is an investment strategy that works, I feel, in neighborhoods that a lot of investors have been ignoring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's a rental instead of an acquisition kind of purchase.
And I'm watching Boyle Heights gentrify every time I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm also seeing in those neighborhoods where larger lots like this, like you're looking for with this kind of property, are getting turned into fourplexes and sixplexes. They're just being scraped, and new product is going up.
Well, what's nice about this is you don't need any zoning change. This works on an R1, mm-hmm. so you can't scrape those without a variance.
Mm-hmm. And so, well, and what particularly I'm intrigued with is the turnaround time. We've been doing some single family ground up builds that are just, we don't want to talk about how long they're taking.
Right. Well, yeah, because that's a full permitting process, right. And it can take a year or two with the backlog at Department of Building and Safety and whatnot, mm-hmm. To get everything through. Yeah. Right now we're looking at flat lots, by right, zoned SFR. So it's their ministerial approval. So that all makes things a lot easier. Where if you're doing ground up, you've got to sometimes you have to have meetings and community outreach and all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's really the long and short of it. Are there any questions from anybody out there? Is this where we see if anybody has any additional questions for us?
Folks, there's a chat button that you can click in and raise your hand and let us know what you're thinking.
So, with the, go back to, so, this is, in looking at this overall strategy, we're really hoping to find some individuals who are looking for, there we go. Perfect. Questions. Let's stop that and start there.
Mm-hmm.
Did we do that?
I don't know.
I did that.
Can I unmute them?
I opened it. And so here we go. Considering any alternatives at this point besides the detached garage, we talked earlier about this junior dwelling unit, taking sections of houses and turning them into in-laws. And up here in Marin and Sonoma, that's the thing. You're taking a downstairs unit, you're taking a living room, making it into adding a kitchenette and a bathroom, making it a full unit. All it has to have is like you said, a private entrance and a parking space. And again, they're in Sonoma County. They're going to be dealing for years with displaced people from the fires. So
that's terrible. But at this point, the reason we chose the detached garages to really focus on is because of the architectural style that's predominant in Los Angeles. There's a lot of detached garages about, but there's not a lot of basements in LA. Right. Hillside gets a little bit more difficult because of parking requirements. As it is, most hillsides don't have enough parking for the structures, but and also the price points. Hillsides in LA go for a premium, where we're trying to really get cheaper per unit rents. But you can definitely do this by we've considered ground up. We've also considered adding a story on top of a garage or something like that. That's on a case-by-case basis. The concern there is additional cost in laying foundation or supporting the existing structure, where for the most part that's not necessary in a detached garage. The other thing that's nice is that some of these spaces you can add a fence and it really feels like a little house in the back, where if it's attached or in a garage, in a basement or something like that, it doesn't have quite the same separation of units. But that's on a case-by-case basis. If we found a property that we really liked and the numbers worked, of course we would look into adding a unit in an existing structure.
Yeah, but it's not really something we're focused on at this time, frankly,
Yeah.
because we know the play. We know what the other side of the play looks like with the ADUs. Seems better at the moment.
Let's talk about it. What goes back into somebody's pocket when you put one of these things together. So I'm just noodling on a piece of paper. If after you've stabilized and tenanted, you're going to go back and refi. Let's call 600,000. I plugged that in at what do you think? 5 3/4 today. A $3,500 monthly number for P&I. You got $625 a month for insurance, for taxes. What do you expect for insurance? $1,200 a year, or something like that, $100 a month or more?
Yeah, something. Yeah, I mean that sounds about right.
All right, $725. So you're $42.25 a month PITI. You probably got some, maybe a little landscaping, some of this, that, garbage, whatever. So $4,300 a month.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
You're
pushing rents at. And I said I think you're a little light on rent at $4,500 total, but
5K total.
5K.
So we're at 5K. So when we estimate this, we're looking at roughly $500 a month, cash flow of about $500 a month.
After pulling out all of the money that went in, though.
Right, exactly. So that's refinance out, as well as, so you refinance out with more traditional financing, you're still cash flowing at $500 a month. You build up a healthy reserve, and I would say maybe the first year or so, the first year you put the money into reserve, and then after that you can cash flow it a little bit. And then, the opportunity as well is for the long-term hold and the subsequent exit strategy. You could, and each individual we work with is going to be different. Some might say, well, I'd like to exit in 10 years. Some might, we're just going to hold it right now because it's cash flowing. We have an investment, we have cash flow coming in, and it might make sense, in 10 years, it might be the perfect time to exit it. We might have a substantial amount of equity built into the asset. It'll make sense to do that. Or maybe that's not the case. Maybe the idea, maybe it's, we'll hold it for 15 years, but again, with the cash flow that it has, even if it's $500 a month in cash flow, you've already refinanced the cash out that you put into the asset.
Right.
So the idea is to build long-term wealth with this plan. It's not a short-term, fix and flip model. It's a long-term buy and hold strategy with a lower barrier of entry that will help you build wealth long-term that's repeatable, that we can do this multiple times over, get you a good return on your investment, and also have this long-term investment strategy. And that's what it's focused on.
Long-term investment story, because this is not something that I can't seem to hold on to things. We just helped a couple that had a 1031 in 1975 or something. They put a couple $100,000 into an apartment building in Santa Rosa, and the woman, who's been a friend of mine for a couple of decades, said, I think I'm getting some money. I don't know what to do with it. Well, she got she got 2.6. She got 2.6 million.
Wow.
In 35 years.
Money.
Right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Right? So there's something about being in the path of progress. Right? And I think East LA, I think you're absolutely right in East LA that is you're in the path of progress. It's starting already. You're not first. It's already there, and there's an appetite. It's easy construction. That whole little town there has turned over and been many things over 100 years, and right now it's workforce housing for downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah. Well, long term, I believe I'm a big believer in the West Coast of the United States as our connection with Asia increases. LA has the largest harbor in the country. Boyle Heights in East LA on a map is very close to downtown LA. It's one subway stop away, but historically, there's a huge divide between those two areas. But that is, in my opinion, not going to be able to last for very much longer. And you're already seeing it breaking down because, if you're sitting in downtown LA in an apartment building, you're spending, or I'm sorry, like a condo or a rental in downtown, you're spending $5,000 or $6,000. Right. And 5 blocks away, rents are going for $2,000. You're moving. And that's just what you're seeing right now is people are going into downtown LA and then spreading out to the immediately accessible areas. And a lot of those are the hottest neighborhoods in LA. So going around LA, you have the Arts District, Boyle Heights, Jefferson Park, Koreatown, Highland Park, Glassell Park, Frogtown. That's basically the entire circle of downtown LA, and they're all super hot neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had another question. How do we handle? You've got some infrastructure issues running plumbing and running water in and sewage out from the back. If you're dealing with a flat piece of land, you're just grading your waste pipe, right? So.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good question that the devil's in the details. Sometimes the benefit is a lot of these places, especially on these older homes in these workforce housing neighborhoods, already have these things done illegally. The sewage trench is already dug and it's in, and there's already someone living in the garage. Sometimes the garage already has a lot of the plumbing in place. So, that's something that going through the properties and just seeing a lot of properties, we can make a lot of profit just through that. But otherwise, yes, you're going to have to run the plumbing through, and that'll go into the build cost estimate before you close escrow.
And speaking on that point, as Marty mentioned, you can find out, obviously, a lot of these details before you ever make the purchase. But when it comes to like plumbing and things of that nature, a lot of these detached garages have their washer dryer units out there. And as a result, you already have some water and some plumbing access that's already built into that. Even if they don't have an illegal ADU essentially built, you still have that laundry room there. And so you do have some plumbing existing that's already, water is already going out to that side of the property. And because these are, you're talking about a studio or a 1-1, you don't need that much more in addition to what's currently there, if that's the case. You don't need enough for a family of 4. You're just talking about probably a single individual, most likely living in that unit.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you're looking to you've done a couple of these now or more?
No, just a couple.
Okay, and so you're looking for partners that have got some real estate knowledge and some experience along with some money, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we can handle every aspect of this. Like I said, we handle the acquisition, the construction. Marty's a property manager, so we can handle every aspect of this from soup to nuts. So if it's something that somebody is interested in, they don't even necessarily need to have real estate experience or knowledge to be a partner, because we can assist with that function. Now, obviously, it's ideal just from even just a communication standpoint for an equity partner to understand, the basics of investing and renting single-family homes, but it's not a necessary component. It's ideal, but not necessary.
Yeah, but this is definitely a partnership, not some sort of a blind operation.
Right, exactly.
Anyone who comes on with us is going to be there every step of the way and making the decision. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, there's some safety. Was there another question I saw?
Somebody else raised their hand, but it could have been all.
It's about ADUs.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Hey, Steve, it's Bruce Rado. How are you?
Bruce, how are you?
Long time no speak.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hey, I just got a quick question. I see you're mostly doing this in Los Angeles, and I've had some experience, or having some experience now, outside of Los Angeles, and I just had a quick question. I've been looking in Ventura County for exactly what you're talking about, and their zoning laws are different. While an RE or an R1 can still accommodate an ADU, there's additional rules and regulations that you have to be aware of. And I was wondering if that transfers, or you've seen any, for example, setback rules for these garages or these additional units. Because I know in Ventura County, you have to be 20 feet from the lot line, 20 feet in from the lot line. And so some of these
Wow.
don't. Are you seeing that at all where you are?
No.
No, so basically the state law that went in said that cities have to allow these, but then the cities are allowed to have their own overlays. And I'm not seeing 20 feet. You know, obviously Ventura is a bit more rural in general than LA. And one of the first things we do when we're looking at a property is sit down with a city planner and see what both their appetite is, because we have no interest in going into a city that's going to push back on this. So we do that, and then also ask general questions about setbacks and whatnot. Certainly 20 feet would kill almost any development we were looking at.
Yeah, that'd be impossible.
Geez, that's like half of the average lot.
Yeah.
So no, the setbacks that we're used to are 5 feet.
Right. Right. And oftentimes, you know, if you're using a detached garage that's already there, it already follows a setback rule.
Or if it doesn't, you can also get a variance because it's grandfathered in if the existing structure is there. So a lot of the properties, you know, if the garage was built in like the 1940s, sometimes it's on the line because the setback rules weren't in place yet, and that can get grandfathered in. Sometimes not. You know, that is a point of negotiation with the individual city, but that's something that's handled before you purchase in escrow.
Yeah, 20 feet is crazy though. That would basically make this play in LA almost impossible because lot sizes here are not that big.
Right. Okay. And you're also not having any issues with either city water, or you don't deal with septic at all, I assume.
From time to time, but everything we've done so far is on sewer. So we haven't had any issues with that. And no, you know, we're not having any issues with city water. What's your concern with water? Are you on city water, or are you on a well?
No, again, my concern, I just want to, you know, for people on the call, just want to clarify, you're talking about mostly about Los Angeles and surrounding environs. Just be careful if you go outside of, you know, civilization, so to speak. Because, for example, in Ventura County, if you want to do an ADU that's not existing, if you're trying to convert a garage and you are on septic, you need a complete new septic system for that ADU. So I'm sure that's the case in LA, but I just want to point out, I mean, it's great to, you know, talk about the stuff, but the devil is in the details, and maybe some locales may have different rules than you're used to. So just didn't want people to rush out and run and buy one.
No, absolutely. And make sure that you have an open communication with the city. Every planner I've ever met is happy to have a conversation with you if you're planning on something. And they'll let you know about a lot of these issues. And then also work with a contractor who's built them in the city that you're working in. And they'll be able to say, hey, you're going to have this issue and this issue. And we bring our contractors onto the property before we close escrow.
Yeah,
in fact, if we're even looking at a property, you know, I'll run it by a contractor and say, hey, what do you think? You know, we haven't even made an offer yet. You know?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, to Bruce's statement about understanding local rules, you couldn't do this in Southern Marin. You couldn't do this down in Sausalito or Tiburon. The standing rule down there is that you have to occupy the main house. You can't rent both. So.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. Every city has a different rule in regards to rentals for these as well. So some of them, a lot of them actually you can't put on Airbnb, for instance, if you're trying to do a short-term rentals. A lot of these have to be long-term rentals, or like you're saying, they limit rentals completely.
And that's something that, it's in these Senate bills that talk specifically about that the municipality has the right to enforce that you cannot rent out the home when you build an ADU. Like it has to be primary residence in order to build the ADU. In some instances, that's true. Like you can't. So there are some of these rules and regulations, which goes back to the very important point: is always check with building and safety. Always make sure you understand your local municipality's rules and laws, regulations. This is not something you just decide to do on a whim. You got to do your research before you make this decision. Absolutely have to do your research.
And it plays with the municipalities that have severe affordability issues, that have housing problems. It absolutely works there. And like I said, Southern Marin and Ventura, they don't need anything. They like it just the way it is. They don't want to change anything.
Right. Which is why we're focused on the East LA, because the upside potential on the exit in a decade or so is really strong. The rental, the acquisition cost versus rent or cap rate, really good in that area. The barrier to entry is lower. All the kind of world aligned, if you will, to make that really a hot and area for this type of play. It's a great way to invest capital and build that long-term wealth.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. And you've done a couple of these, and like you said, Marty, you're a property manager, so you've got people in place. You're doing everything the way it's supposed to be. There's licensed contractors, all that. We're not banging nails in the middle of the night, avoiding code enforcement.
No.
That's just
fully
personal.
Permitted, everything done up to spec. You got to do it right. If you go cheap, you go twice. As they say, like you got to do it right.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think this has been great. We've come up like just right on our hour.
Perfect.
So we'll go download this recording and post it up on the YouTube channel along with all the other ones. Those of you that are new and haven't seen it, you can find all of our past episodes on YouTube under my name, Steve Hodgdon, Hodgdon. And I want to thank Marty Friedman and Eric Betts for sitting in with us this evening. And good to see all of you. And we'll see you again next month. All right. Thank you much. All right.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you. Good job.